Hello friends, welcome back to math. Today you and I are going to talk about AM and PM. Before we do that, I want us to do a really quick review of what we've learned so far. Let's go look at my clock. Okay, we're back here with my clock. I want us to just do a quick review of what we've learned so far. So we want to remember that our shorter hand is our hour hand and our longer hand is the minute hand. Okay. Now something I was talking about today with my class was that the hour hand is always going to be reading these bigger numbers. These are the hours marked off on our clock. Okay. The minute hand will never be reading any of these big hour numbers though. It will never be reading those numbers. So you will never have 608 with this pointing at the 8. Okay. So as a reminder, these numbers don't mean the same thing for the minutes and the hours. The minute hand can be pointing directly at these numbers, but it doesn't mean 8 minutes, it means 40 minutes. So if your clock has these numbers on the outside, that makes it nice and easy. But when you don't have those numbers to show your minutes on the outside of your clock, the easiest way to tell is to count by fives going around until you reach your minute hand. So we would go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, until we get to the number that my minute hand is pointing to. Okay. So just as a reminder, the minute hand will never read these numbers. It is only pointing at them, but it still needs to be told in minutes, which are different. The hour hand is reading this, so this is 6, and we'd be after the 6 right now. It would be 6:40 on my clock, okay? Not 6:08. 6 is the hour, and 40 would be my minutes. So that is just a quick reminder of what we've talked about with our minutes and our hour hand. And then another thing, we have these quarter past, half past, and quarter to, which are just other ways to say those times. So remember, quarter is 15 minutes. So this would be one chunk of our clock is a quarter of our clock. So when my minute hand is pointing at 3, we are a quarter of a way through that hour. So if this was my time, I would say it's 1:15, or I could say it's a quarter past 1 o'clock. When my minute hand is pointing down at the 6, that is the same as saying half past or 30 minutes after, and it would be 1:30 or half past 1 o'clock. Okay. You could also say it's 30 minutes until 2 o'clock, because that would be our next hour. And then our last one that we have that's really important is quarter to. Remember, it is a quarter to because you only have a quarter of your hour left until the next hour. So if my clock looked like this would be 1:45 or a quarter to 2 o'clock, because we're only 15 minutes away from 2 o'clock. I like to think of quarter as 15 minutes, which helps me if I need to figure out how to say it in another way. If I know that it's 3:15, I know that's a quarter after 3. If it's 3:45, I know that's only 15 minutes until 4, or a quarter to 4. So those are just a couple things that we've talked about so far. So we're learning about AM and PM. Now AM is simply morning time, okay? Morning time means midnight, which is 12 a.m., all the way until 12 p.m. or noon in the middle of the day, so about your lunchtime. So anything in the morning is AM. PM is anything between noon and midnight. So from lunchtime until you're asleep in bed, that is the PM part of the day. So our day is split into morning, AM, and PM, afternoon and evening. Okay, let's go watch our visual learning video to learn more.
You can use the terms AM and PM to tell about time. Use AM for morning times. Use PM for afternoon or evening times.
I wake up at 8 a.m. and I go to bed at 8 p.m.
The clock shows a time when you might eat breakfast. What time do both clocks show? The clocks show 8:20. Do you eat breakfast at 8:20 a.m. or 8:20 p.m.?
Select your answer.
Well, I don't know about you, but most of the time I eat my breakfast in the morning, so that would be 8:20 a.m.
You eat breakfast in the morning. So it is 8:20 a.m. What does a.m. stand for? It stands for antemeridium, which means before noon. Remember, if an event takes place before noon or in the morning, use a.m. to describe the time. If an event takes place after noon or in the afternoon or evening, then use p.m. to describe the time. The clocks show a time when you might eat lunch at school. What time do both clocks show?
So both clocks are showing us 11:45. Now we need to figure out would that be a.m. or p.m.
The clocks show 11:45. Is this before or after noon? What does this tell you?
This would be before noon because it's lunchtime, and that means that it has to be a.m. If it was p.m., that would be 15 minutes before midnight, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure none of us wait to eat our lunch until 11:45 p.m.
It is before noon, so it is 11:45 a.m. The clocks show a time when you might eat dinner with your family. What time do both clocks show? The clocks show 6:30. Do you eat dinner in the morning or the evening? Is this time a.m. or p.m.?
We eat dinner in the evening, so that would be p.m.
You eat dinner in the evening, so this time is p.m. Now you know how to tell time and use reasoning to state whether the event is happening in the a.m. or p.m.
Okay, you know what's coming next. We got to do some practice, especially with time. Time takes a lot of practice. Let's get our workbooks and go do our guided practice. Okay, we are on page 486 in our workbooks. So if you need to pause me to go get your workbook and turn to that page with your pencil, go ahead and pause me right now. Once you're ready, let's look at these two guided practice problems. It says, complete the clocks so both clocks show the same time. Then circle AM or PM to tell when you would do each activity. Okay, let's look at number one. So this clock is showing, let's see, how many hours? What hour are we in on this clock? Well, our hour hand, the shorter hand, is between the 8 and the 9. So that means we're in the 8 o'clock hour. And now we need to figure out how many minutes. So I'm going to start at 0 or at the 12, and I'm going to count by fives until I get to my minute hand. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. We are 45 minutes after 8 o'clock, so our time is 8:45. Now we need to decide if this is in the AM, the morning, or if it's in the PM, the evening. So we would be riding the bus to school. Would you do that in the morning, in the AM, or in the evening, PM? What do you think? We do that in the morning, right? So we would say it's in the AM. That means our clocks are showing 8:45 AM. Let's look at number two. Well, our digital clock is showing 4:30, so we need to draw that onto our analog clock. Let's do our hour hand first. We're in the 4 o'clock hour, so we need to point our hour hand in between the 4 and the 5. Remember, the hour hand is shorter, so don't make it too long. And I'm just going to point it between the 4 and the 5. And then we need to figure out where 30 minutes would be with our minute hand on the clock. So again, I'm going to start at 12 or 0 minutes, and I'm going to count by fives until I reach 30. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. That means my minute hand has to point straight at the 6. That would be 30 minutes. Notice my minute hand is longer. I have it just barely touching my number on my clock to show that it's the minute hand. So our clocks show 4:30. Now the activity is doing your homework. Do you do your homework at 6:30? Do you do your homework at 4:30 a.m. or 4:30 p.m.? I'm pretty sure we're all asleep still at 4:30 a.m. So we would do our homework at 4:30 p.m. in the evening. Great job. We're gonna watch one more quick video.
You can use AM and PM to help you tell about time. You use AM for morning times or before noon, and PM for afternoon and evening times or afternoon. At 9 o'clock, you're usually at school. Would that be AM or PM? School would be in the morning or before noon. That is AM. Let's try another one. What if you eat breakfast at 6:30? Is that AM or PM? You would eat breakfast at 6:30 a.m., not 6:30 p.m., because you eat breakfast in the morning. What if the clock says 9 o'clock and you're getting ready for bed? Would that be AM or PM? You would be getting ready for bed in the evening or afternoon, so that would be PM. What if you were eating dinner at 6:30? Do you do that in the morning, before noon, or in the evening, afternoon? You would eat dinner in the evening, so that would be 6:30 p.m. Think of some other things you can do in the AM and in the PM, and write them down.
Okay, let's keep practicing in our workbook. Let's turn that page, and then let's do number 3 together on this next page here. It says complete both of the clocks so they show the same time, then circle AM or PM to tell when you would do each activity. So the same thing that we were doing in our guided practice. It says on this clock, well, let's see. Our hour hand is between the 3 and the 4. So that means we're in the 3 o'clock hour. And then we need to figure out how many minutes after 3. So I'm going to start at my 12 or 0 minutes and count by 5s until I reach my minute hand. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. We are 45 minutes after 3. So our time is 3:45. Okay. That's also 4:45. So would this be in the morning or in the afternoon? Would it be AM or PM? You're taking the bus home from school. Is that AM or PM? That would be afternoon, right? So that would be in the PM. You don't take the bus to school at 3:45 in the morning. That'd be way too early. I want you to do number 4 by yourself. It says walk the dog before breakfast. You're going to decide if that's in the morning or in the evening, AM or PM, and then also write the time on your digital clock, and then come back to me when you think you got it. Okay, so our clock, let's look at the analog clock. So my hour hand is pointing almost right at 8, but I can see that my minute hand is after the 12, which means we're into the 8 o'clock hour. So I'm going to put 8, and then I know that if I go from 0 and I add 5, I'd be at 5 minutes after 8. So my time is 8:05. Okay. And if I'm walking the dog before breakfast, well, breakfast is in the AM, so that means this is definitely in the AM. This is showing 8:05 a.m. Let's do number 6. Take swimming lessons on Saturday morning. Well, they kind of gave us a hint right there, didn't they? But let's write our time on our analog clock. So our digital clock says 10:15. So I need to put my hour hand between the 10 and the 11, and I need to keep it nice and short because it's my hour hand. So I'm going to point it right there. And then for 15 minutes, I'm going to start at 0 or my 12 and count by 5s until I reach 15. So 5, 10, 15. So my minute hand is going to be pointed straight at the 3, and it's longer. So now both clocks show 10:15, and our activity is taking swimming lessons on Saturday morning. They already told us it's in the morning, right? So is that AM or PM? AM. Easy peasy. Okay, you're going to do number 7. It's watching a movie on Friday night. So draw your time on your analog clock with your short hour hand and your long minute hand, and then circle if that would be in the AM or in the PM. You done? Okay. So 7 o'clock is my hour. So I need to put my hour hand between the 7 and the 8. Just like that. And then I need to count out 20 minutes because it's 20 minutes after 7. So 5, 10, 15, 20. So I'm going to point my minute hand at the 4. So now both clocks show 7:20, and it's watching a movie on a Friday night. Well, that's nighttime, which is PM. Let's do number 9 together. It says, Jen and Maria have dance lessons at the time shown on the clock. Write the time 2 different ways, and then say if it's AM or PM and explain. So let's read what the time is. I'm just going to write my time over here. So my hour hand is between what 2 numbers? It's between 3 and 4. So what hour are we in? We're in the 3 o'clock hour. So I'm going to put my 3, and then I need to separate them. And now we need to figure out how many minutes after 3 o'clock it is. So I'm going to start at 0, or my 12 up here, and I'm going to count around by 5s until I get to my minute hand. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. So it is 45 minutes after 3 o'clock. So the time of their dance lesson is at 3:45. Now we need to write that in 2 different ways. So down here, what's one way that we could write this? Well, we could talk about how many minutes it is past 3 o'clock. So we could say 45 minutes after 3. And then do you remember the way that we talked about yesterday with the quarters? If we look, we only have 15 minutes left until 4 o'clock, which means we're a quarter to 4. Okay? So we can also write this time as quarter to 4. Those are 2 ways that we could write that. Now we need to decide if this is AM or PM. Okay, so they're taking a dance lesson. Do you think that these girls are taking a dance lesson at 3:45 a.m. in the morning? It's still like super, super dark outside. I think it's PM. So I'm going to say it must be in the PM or in the afternoon because most people are sleeping at 3:45 a.m. Okay, just like that. So we said our 2 ways to write the time. We told them if it was AM or PM, and we explained why we think it's PM, not AM. Let's turn the page. Okay, let's read number 10, and then you're going to solve it all by yourself. Draw hands on the clock to show what time your school begins each day. Then write the time. Include AM or PM. So this might be different for you because you're in different Zoom meetings at different times. I want you to pick what time your very first Zoom meeting is in the morning, okay? And that's the time I want you to write on your clock. So go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back together once we have our time on our clock and you wrote down if it's AM or PM. My first Zoom meeting starts at 8:10 in the morning, and I know it's in the morning, so I'm going to say AM because that's before noon. Okay, now I'm going to draw that time on my clock. So my 8 o'clock hour means I have to draw my hour hand between the 8 and the 9. So a short little hour hand, and then it's 10 minutes after 8. So I'm going to start up here and go 5:10. I need to play my minute hand right at the 2. Just like that. So there's my time. 8:10 a.m. is when I start my first Zoom meeting. What time do you start your first Zoom meeting? Did you write it on the clock? Good job, you guys. Let's look at another problem. Okay, let's look at number 12. It says Grace starts her homework at 4:15. She finishes her homework 45 minutes later. Draw the hands on the clocks to show both times. So we're going to write down the time when she starts and when she finishes her homework. So let's do that first. On the first clock, we need to write 4:15. So I'm going to write that on my digital clock first because I already have that time. So 4:15. And now let's put that on our analog clock. What 2 numbers should I write my hour hand between? Where should I point it? I should point it between the 4 and the 5. So I'm going to go just like that, not too long. Now, if it's 15 minutes after 4 o'clock, I need to count out 15 minutes. So 5, 10, 15. So I need to point my minute hand at the 3. That would be 15 minutes after 4. Make it nice and long. Okay. Now we have to figure out what would 45 minutes later be. Now we could do the addition problem 15 plus 45 to help us, and we would get the answer 60. But I'm not sure about you. Do we know where to put that on our second clock here? And do we know how to write 4 hours and 60 minutes? That doesn't quite make sense. So let's look at our clock and see if we can count 45 minutes later and see where that puts our minute hand. So if I start here, I'm going to count 45 minutes by fives. And let's see where I stop. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. Okay, so I need to point my minute hand straight up at the 12. Do you remember what I said about what it means when your minute hand is pointing straight at the 12? That means we're at the beginning of a new hour. So it's not going to be 4 o'clock anymore. We're actually going to be at the start of 5 o'clock. So that means my hour hand has to be pointed straight at the 5. So if we go 45 minutes later, we're now at 5 o'clock. So that's our time that we're going to put on here. If your minute hand is ever pointing at the top of your clock, pointing at the 12, that means you're at 0 minutes, not 60. If it's pointing just one little notch over, then you're not at 60 yet. It's got to be straight up and down. So now we need to figure out, would these times be in the AM or the PM? So remember, she is doing her homework. She starts at 4:15 and she finishes at 5 o'clock. Would that be AM or PM? That would be PM, yeah. I'm pretty sure no teacher wants their students doing homework at 4:45 or 4:15 or 5 o'clock in the morning. That's way too early. Okay, last problem, friends. You are going to circle whether you think these activities are in the AM or the PM. I'm going to do this one kind of with you. So you're going to answer it first, and then I'll tell you if you're right. So, brushing your teeth before bedtime. Is that AM or PM? That'd be in the evening, so that's PM. If it's before bed, that's in the PM. Go to soccer practice after school. AM or PM? Well, if it's after school, that's definitely afternoon, so that would be PM as well. Walk the dog before dinner, AM or PM? Well, dinner's in the PM, so that means it's PM. And last one, watch the sunrise. Would that be in the AM or the PM? That would be AM. That'd be very early in the morning. Great job, you guys. Let's look at that homework. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to go back into the workbook and you're going to solve problems 5, 8, and 11. I think those are the only ones that are left that we didn't solve in there on those pages. And then you're going to go do your quick check. And after that, you're going to spend some time on Math Facts Pro. Tomorrow, ladies and gents, we are going to do a whole bunch of practice together. So when we come to math tomorrow, we are just going to practice, practice, practice. You're still going to need your workbook, so make sure you bring that and be ready to practice and practice and practice. I will see you then, friends. Bye.